A quick word from our sponsor, Fourth Party. If you're serious about building a real business, not just a practice, you need systems that work as hard as you do. That's where Fourth Party comes in. It's built specifically for dispute resolution professionals, and Fourth Party is the all-in-one back-end platform that handles your intake, scheduling, file management, payments, and more, so you can focus on doing the work that you love. And because you are a listener of the Practice Playbook podcast, you can get 20% off your first 3 months. Just visit fourthparty.app and use the code Susan20 at checkout. Take control of your business and start building it like a CEO with Fourth Party. Welcome to the Practice Playbook podcast, your go-to resource for legal professionals, mediators, and entrepreneurial experts building modern, profitable, and purpose-driven businesses. I'm your host, Susan Guthrie, attorney, mediator, and #1 best-selling author with over 35 years of experience. I'm a former chair of the ABA section of dispute resolution, and I've helped thousands of professionals build practices they love through my books, coaching, and training programs. Each week, I'll bring you real-world strategies, mindset shifts, and behind-the-scenes insights to help you grow with clarity, confidence, and impact. Let's dive in. Welcome back, everyone, to the Practice Playbook podcast. I am so glad that you are here because today we are diving into a question that every entrepreneurial professional needs to ask themselves, and that's whether you're 5 years into practice or 35 years. Are you building a firm or are you building a high-paying job? If your practice cannot run without you, if every client relationship, every strategic decision, every intake call, every major revenue driver depends entirely on you showing up, then you may not actually own a transferable business. You may own a very demanding job. And today, we're going to unpack that reality in a powerful way. I'm joined by Andrea Steinbrenner. She's the CEO and partner of Exit Consulting Group. Andrea works with business owners across industries to guide them through succession, transition, and exit planning. She brings deep experience as a former fractional CFO and operational leader who has helped scale firms significantly. But what makes her perspective so compelling is that she does not reduce exit strategy to a transaction. She talks about transition. She talks about legacy. She talks about relevance. And she challenges founders to think beyond the liquidity event and ask a much deeper question. What is the future of what you have built? If you're a mediator, lawyer, consultant, or professional who has spent years building something meaningful, this conversation is going to hit home. Because whether you plan to sell, wind down, pass it on, or simply want more freedom in your life, you cannot avoid this truth. A business that depends entirely on you is fragile. So today we're talking about founder dependency, succession planning, emotional resistance to letting go, and what it really takes to build something that can outlast you. Stay with us. This is one of those conversations that may shift how you see your entire practice. Let's dive in. Andrea, I'm so delighted to have you joining with me and to be able to have an expert of your caliber on this topic for my listeners, I think is going to be a real treat. I have so many things to talk to you about. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It says it all in the name of your business, or I think it does, Exit Consulting Group. Really, that is your niche. That's your area of expertise, helping people in that phase where they're coming to the end of the business or the business is going to be transitioning, I'll call it. end of life. Maybe we talk about strategies or end of business strategies. And I was just telling you, for me professionally, personally, it was really interesting that this interview came up at this time because in just the past couple of weeks, I've gotten some new clients who are kind of in this phase of, I've been practicing for decades and now I want to kind of start winding down. What does that look like for my business next? Can I sell it? Can I transition it? Can I turn it into something else? Do I wind it down? So I'm delighted we're going to be able to talk about this so that people can start thinking about it maybe before they're ready to move on to that next phase. So let me ask you first, because this is actually the situation for both of the clients I have. They have practiced for decades, right? They've had practices for decades, but they are generally solos. They've had people come in and work for them. They've had associates or employees, but in the end, they really have the majority of what I'll call the content of the business. And
Yeah.
so they're confused or they're concerned about where it goes from now. And so let's just start there because they are very founder driven, I would call it.
Where we start is more of a esoteric place when we jump into this with clients. We're really you use the word that we use. So we use the word transition as well. We can help a company transact. We're bankers and brokers and CFOs and all the things, but that's just the function of what we're really talking about. The heart of what we're talking about is the transition. And that's where we tend to overlook or go fast as business owners because it's uncomfortable and it's sensitive and it's vulnerable. But it's actually what helps us feel like we were successful. And we can get caught up in what the marketplace is called success, but that might not actually resonate with us. And so, where I'm going with the question, Susan, is before we start to say, where do we start? We sit down with business owners and we ask, well, what is your goal? Because lots of people thinking about considering or working through succession and exit strategy and transition have different goals, and it's not a one size fits all. And I will tell you what's really interesting is many times people start this process with the mindset of a liquidity event. And it's really not about a liquidity event. Most of the time, especially if it's a solo practitioner that's been operating for decades, they've made the money throughout their life. They've lived the lifestyle they've wanted, and the business has allowed them to do that. So having a huge liquidity event now is not here nor there. It's more of an ego play, if anything, at that stage of life. But really, we talk about, well, what's going to make you continue to feel relevant? Not just in the marketplace, but in your life. You're not just the CEO or founder or managing partner of your company. That's how the world views you. That's how your family views you. That's how your friend group views you. So, how do you continue to feel relevant? What matters to you? And how do we structure a plan that supports that? The other side of it, we really spend a lot of time on is legacy. What's the legacy you want to leave behind? Is the legacy your trust is well endowed and your family's taken care of and they get the family homestead, and that's really what matters? Is it your brand? Is it your employees and what they've brought to the table and how they can continue to succeed what you've done? So none of it's better than the other. It's just we need to know what the target is and then build the plan around that.
That is such a great way to break it down because it's really looking at where do you want this to go from here? What
Yeah,
is the point of a transition? What is the goal of your transition? Yet I think, at least for the professionals that I talk to and work with, and most of my colleagues in law and dispute resolution, many of them just don't have any thought of that. They really have just,
right.
day to day been showing up in the office, getting the work done, plugging away, and they have not really thought about what this looks like if they were to exit. I really like the way you break it down into the different components. I think for most, the initial thought is, well, how can I take what I've built and continue to bring in money with it or to get
Right.
from it? But you've raised so many other considerations for people. But when they are, does timing of having this conversation matter? Because one of the
Sure.
things that I've considered is if you think about this ahead of time, you can maybe build something that can be
Yeah.
transited in different ways versus thinking about it closer to the transition gives you less options.
Yeah, for sure. And also, it can impact the ability to have a liquidity event the more planning you do or whatnot. So, where I'm going with that is, I mean, anytime you can start something sooner rather than later is important. And in something like succession planning and exit strategy and going concern of your company, it doesn't happen in one conversation or one iterative pass or 1 year even. It's a multi-function, multi-step, and it involves a lot of people. So really well put together exit strategies and succession plans include working with financial planners, include working with corporate attorneys, include working with estate planners, include working with your CPA. I could keep going. Your insurance brokers, your landlord if you're leasing. I mean, it goes on and on and on. We have to pick up all of those rocks and look at them and actually find out what's under them and then find out how we want to structure that going forward. So, for instance, if you have a decent sized company and you plan to liquidate at a good number, you're going to probably experience something called capital gains tax. The
Uh-oh.
more that we can plan for that ahead of time, we can put certain instruments and vehicles in place that either mitigate or defer that capital gains tax so more cash remains either in your pocket or in your family estate or your trust for further use. If a business owner, when I should say, a business owner comes to us and says, I want to sell this year, we can help them transact, but we can't help them transition as well. And so it tends to be a little chaotic. It tends to be a little caustic. And unfortunately, we end up ending on that word that we're all trying to not hit, which is regret. And so there's something that gets left behind, or we just have to move faster, and so we can't do as much around different elements of it. So absolutely, we tell people to plan ahead. It's really interesting when I speak to groups of CEOs. I'll ask what the average, when people think that they want to exit. And for the groups I speak to, most people are, somewhere in the ballpark of thinking about it. And even those that are, well beyond what the marketplace would call retirement age, none of them say 1 year. It's too soon, it's too fast, it's too scary. 10 years, it's too far out, right? Who knows what the world's going to be in 10 years. So they say five. Five safe. When I go back and speak to that group of, a year later and the same people are in the room, you know what they say?
5 years.
5 years. And you know what they say the third year I go
You
talk to
just
them?
moved the line,
5
right?
years. Yeah. Yeah, because it's a safe number where it feels like, "Oh, I've got time, but I don't have to do anything now." And what we want to impress upon people thinking about it is just start doing something, even if it's getting your trust documents updated, even if it's, "How do I pass one thing that's mission critical in my business to my second in command? Or do I have a second in command? Should I start to think about that? And what am I willing to give to them now? And how do I set up a plan to start passing more down the road?" So those are the types of things we start to pick at when we start working with clients in this space.
I can see that when you talk with people, they want to give it a number that means they're kicking the can, right? Comfortably kicking the can. But what I'm
Yeah,
hearing you say actually is there's no time that's really too early where you could start doing something to be
totally.
moving this along. 10 years isn't actually too far down the road to start thinking about this.
No, and even I mean, we work with some young clients too who are, they're saying, I want to build this for 10 years and sell it. A lot of times, though, they're also thinking about what happens if I change my mind 5 years from now and I want to go faster? What happens if something happens to me or somebody I love and care about and need to spend time taking care of them and I can't be in the business all the time? So there really is never a bad time to start, but it doesn't mean you have to go full bloke all the way in immediately, especially depending on where you're at and the trajectory of your business life cycle.
And I can see that, and having a plan, my most recent book is about business planning, and most people think it's how to write a business plan, and it is, but it's really about how a business plan is never done. How a business plan
No,
is something that daily can even, needs to be reviewed and
absolutely.
changed. And I think your exit plan or strategy is the same thing. You may have one that you think is 10 years ahead of time, but by the time you get to effectuating it or actually making that exit or transition, it may look very different than what it did today. But you've been thinking about it and fine tuning it over that time period.
Yeah, and I mean, we can encourage groups and business owners to bring it to their management groups that they're looking at it every year during annual strat planning, even if they're just speaking to it. I think we have this human nature to assume that if we start talking about exiting or change, all of a sudden we're not needed anymore. All of a sudden we become irrelevant and we're replaceable. And there's truth to that. I mean, everybody's replaceable because the world still has to operate if somebody doesn't show up, right? But the way in which it operates, the impact it has, that's all subjective. I think there's actually more relevancy and legacy that's left behind and expressed and experienced when we plan and pass the baton successfully versus not. And it's a mind shift we have to make as business owners and founders, that it's actually we're creating more of that thing we're afraid we're going to lose. So it becomes this weird, like either self-sabotaging cycle or self-fulfilling prophecy. But having an outsider come in and actually talk about it with you and help you see it as a business owner is really important. I mean, I am my business partners and our founder succession plan. And we talk about it very openly. And there was a point in time where I sat down with John a couple years ago and I said, "You brought me in to succeed you." He said, "Yes." And I said, "You tell me I have all of your support." And he said, "Yes." And I said, "But you block everything I do and you're self-sabotaging." And he said, "What?" And so when I was able to hold the mirror up to him, just lovingly, gently, but firmly at the same time, he said, "Oh my gosh, I am our clients." And I said, "Yeah, because we're all human and
Yeah.
we need that reflective mirror." It's just like when you go to marital counseling, right? Like the counselor says something your spouse has said to you for 5 years and they go, "I've been telling you that for 5 years." And you go, "Yeah, but I like how they said it better."
I I didn't think you knew what you were talking about. This
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
and that's so
Exactly.
true. I mean, and in
Yeah.
my other life, I was a divorce attorney, so I certainly
Yeah.
got
You know.
viewpoint from people all the time, you
Yeah.
know, and what I love that you're doing here, and I hope my listeners are hearing this because the reality of our business world is that it's very much tied into our personal world and to our personal
Absolutely.
worth, right? Especially professionals. I've been
Totally.
a professional for 35 years. I've worked with professionals for those 35 years. And if there's a group out there that is more tied into an identity of who we are, what we do, I can't imagine it. You know,
Yeah, I mean, I tell my team now because I'm learning to be vulnerable as I work with my clients. When I see them out in the marketplace or I see our brand out in the marketplace, it's like it feels like little pieces of my heart walking outside of my body, representing this thing that is me and us. And I want it to be a certain way. I want people to experience ECG a certain way, but I also want the marketplace to be kind to my people and to accept them and embrace them and see the light, right? And so it is very personal. It's like a child, it's like a family member, and even more so because we spend more time with it than we do a lot of times in our personal life. So I think we're fooling ourselves and we're doing ourselves a disservice and our teams and the people we serve if we don't acknowledge how much our heart impacts our business and then our ability to succeed that business. And I think when we just make it about a liquidity event, it becomes very cut and dry. And there's nothing wrong with liquidity events. But if that's the sole focus, it becomes very tactical and static. And that's actually, I mean, we can get people tons of money, right? But if that's all you have at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And I mean, you can get buried with your dollars. I wouldn't suggest it for everybody else, but you can. But that's not really what life's about, and as the CFO and as my partners too, we can solve for money. You can always solve for money. But once you transition and transact, it's really hard to go back and solve for legacy and relevancy. It's really hard to unwind that and try to put it back together. And what we find is we have business owners who then spend the next trajectory of their life trying to make up that gap. And it's devastating, to be honest with you.
no, I can imagine, that's sort of where I am talking with my current clients who have, as I said, spent decades building practices, but that are mainly focused on them, their work, which is excellent. They've got wonderful reputations. They've done amazing work in dispute resolution and law over the years, but they're coming to that sort of later part of their practice and sort of facing that dichotomy of it's provided a wonderful income for them and a lifestyle for them over the years, but they're now facing, and so what's that worth? And there's something in there that is it worth something to someone else to buy it? And there's a little bit of a probably not, unless it has certain elements to it that can be transferred. And they've
Yeah, and I would
thought
probably
about it that
encourage
way.
yeah, encourage a conversation between you and them that says, doesn't matter if it's worth something to someone else, because I think we get fixated around a successful exit means I sell
Right.
and or I pass it. And that could be if that's truly your personal definition of a win. But if your definition of a win is I've had a successful business, I've sustained my lifestyle, I've been able to take care of my family, I've been able to give back to community, whatever those boxes are, and you've done it, and selling wasn't part of that list, then it's okay. And I think there's a weird stigma we've created in the marketplace around winding a company down or liquidating a company that somehow that is equivalent to failure. And it's not necessarily. It can be, but even so, like if that happens with certain businesses, I don't even necessarily think it's failure. I think it's just part of the path of learning the thing you needed to do to go do the next thing. So I challenge business owners who are so focused on can I pass it and sell it? If it matters to them, great. But I will tell you, if you're a solo practitioner and you've spent decades being a solo practitioner, it's going to take you years to structure your company in a place that is workable operationally by somebody else. And at that point in your life, is that really what you want? Is that what matters? Or can you pass your book of business, maybe sell that piece of it off, wind down your office, make sure your employees have a place to land, and then all that other liquidity you've been saving and storing and investing allows you to live the life, and you're not carrying this burden because you put this false narrative on yourself that was somebody else's.
There's sort of an ease and grace to giving
Totally.
yourself that space to do that. I do want to hone in on something that you said there because I think it might also be sort of a middle ground for people in that either solo or small firm or you have had maybe associates or younger partners along the way. So there may be a path to transitioning some parts of what you've built.
Yeah.
You just said book of business. It could be for many of my
Totally.
practitioners, they have, I'm going to call it the method. Like they have their
Right. The
forms,
secret sauce.
exactly, their secret
Yeah.
sauce. They may have a wonderful reputation in the area where, for a time period, they might be a wonderful referral source for others because people will still come to them for suggestions, etc. So it may not be that the entire business transitions, but perhaps, am I hearing you say there might be things that can
It could
transition?
be. Let's use a law firm as an example 'cause it's
Great.
an easy
Yeah.
example with the space we're in,
With this
right?
group. Yes.
Yep, yep, and we work with lots of law firms in this space, and we work with a lot of solo practitioners in this space. Sometimes not sometimes, a lot of times their brand is their name.
Yes.
So that's hard to especially if it's one name, that's hard to pass or sell to somebody else because that person who would pick it up also wants their name and their brand. But they might have a great clientele list. They might estate planning attorneys, they have hundreds of clients and they're touching them a couple times a year. And those trust and wills and all those things in it still need that touch and care. Where do you go? And most of the time, for myself included, if I'm working with a professional and they retire, I say, tell me where to go. And I just go to their referral source,
Sure.
right? I don't
Sure.
go and shop it around. They've earned my trust. So many times in professional service firms like what we're talking about and solo practitioners, the assets are the employees, they're the secret sauce, and they're the clientele list, right? But another solo practitioner might have office space, so they don't necessarily need to take on your lease. They might have their own IP or their own secret sauce. So they may say, hey, that's great, but I want this. We have lots of solo practitioners, you can get this, who do podcasts, right? And so they're like, can we get that? Can we get that audience? So there's lots of elements to the business that hold value to other business owners. It just might not be the whole enterprise, and it might be inappropriate to try to sell the whole enterprise. And so we try to show them the elements that matter and then the elements that they can keep or wind down as appropriation with their life.
It makes so much sense. And I think maybe this goes back to that emotional side, though, right? People see it for its totality. And it's almost like we're breaking it down for parts. We're taking the car and the carburetor
Totally.
shot, that's not worth anything. But, the gaskets and I don't even know other parts of a car. So I'm going to lose the metaphor here. But, the the tailpipe is wonderful, right? So,
Right.
and that may be a little difficult to take that high level look at your business like that and be able to see what has value outside to someone else and what was, is an element of you that just goes with you.
Right. And I'd say, for these two clients you're referring to now, another path they could talk through and consider is if they have, good associates that are in play or the next rung down in the, attorney hierarchy that they say, hey, this attorney shows a lot of potential. Do you want to own your own firm one day? Would you be interested in taking this on? And exiting your company doesn't have to happen all at once either. With legal services, particularly, there's a lot of things that have tails, like insurance
Oh,
claims
oh,
and
we know that
malpractice
one.
suits and lawsuits and things that just naturally hit the industry and hit the law firms. So it might be that you start slow and build to a full on exit where a piece of ownership goes to a certain individual. And during that time, you start to groom and coach and mentor. And over the course of paying off a debt instrument or a pay down or payout over a period of time, that person becomes more and more into the fold, or that group of people becomes more and more into the fold. And by the time you're fully exiting, they have all of the confidence to run the firm and you have all of the trust that they can.
You basically create your successor. You
Totally.
go into it. And it's so interesting you say that because that is exactly what I mentioned to both of them because they both, as I said, have had associates. And it was interesting to me. And this brings back that emotional component, I think, that so, permeates this space. I mean, people may not realize that one of them said that they've had wonderful associates, but the associates would get to a point where they wanted their name on the sign, and that would
Right.
be a splitting event.
That's the fork in the road. Yep.
And I said, "Well, why did you not want to put their name on the sign?" And that was sort of a light bulb. Like, why? I don't know why I didn't want to put their name on the sign. And I think it's because they had never thought about this concept of creating their legacy, creating the person who would be the next in line,
Right.
because it was so tied to them. So that emotional part, I mean, I know we've talked about it, but I think that is probably one of the bigger hurdles for anyone in this space, either just as it is when we don't want to go do our will, right? Because we don't want to talk about what's going to happen when we're dead because we don't want to think about what dying, right? And all that.
Yeah.
Same thing with this sort of legacy planning and exit strategy is people don't want to think about it because it's
Uh-uh.
tied to the emotion. So there's that side of it, but there's also that side that is this is us, this is me, this firm. Usually, as you pointed out, Guthrie Consulting is the name of my firm. It was Guthrie Law and Mediation back when I had my boutique family law firm. Right? It's us. It's hard to contemplate passing that on.
Yeah. So I would say if you have a business, funny, I was on a podcast yesterday, I asked a similar question. And they said, what if your company's named your name? What do you do? And I said, well, start with what matters to you, right? Like, are you trying to sell it or are you trying to create a lifestyle in perpetuity beyond owning it that you can sustain? Two different things. And then work with good marketing people because they will help you figure out what to do. But, find a brand. I mean, that's the first thing is you find a brand that you can start to align your actual product and your name to, which is your brand you create that you can shift. But, the other emotional side of it that we're kind of dancing around is we get to the point where we're ready to create a succession plan. We get to the point of we've found these people that we think can do it, but we still have to do the work. And that's the hardest part,
Yeah.
really. I mean, it's hard to have the conversation and it's hard to find the people that you want. But more often than not, we experience when you have that number one or number two, usually the first one or two that's there don't make it through because the business owner cannot let go. And the business owner doesn't actually know what they're looking for in a successor. And so they figure it out through a couple of trial and errors. And it's not that the successor wasn't right or wasn't their unicorn. It could have been, but the business owner wasn't ready to do the work and say, okay, I'm the one who takes all the intake calls. Can someone else do it? And do I trust them to vet it? And if it's not perfect or they make a mistake, am I going to have grace, or is I'm going to use that as a reason why I can't go away? And so we have to start having those conversations with ourselves that say how serious I am. More often than not, initially, we see business owners commit to this process and
Yeah.
communicate it to their leadership team. And then when they don't do the actions that follow through, they lose the loyalty.
It makes so much sense. And I think interestingly, what you said is people have to have the conversations with themselves. Here's where it's important to have a consultant, right? Because you don't necessarily have to have the conversations with yourself. I mean, eventually you're going to have to turn inward and see if you can do this, but you just held that mirror up. And there's
Yeah.
one of the huge values of bringing someone in who knows the journey and is able to help you hold that mirror up and ask. It's just like any process of change. It's hard. It's hard.
I wouldn't know how to start certain processes of change. I wouldn't know what questions to ask myself. I wouldn't know what tools to go invest in. I wouldn't know what programs to sign up for. So this is not something that most people go through iterative times in their lives. And so having experts around you who say there is an actual process, there is an actual timing, there is an actual art to the science is very helpful. It seems like one of those things you can just wing and figure it out until you realize, oh my gosh, all these things just happened and I don't understand them. And I use the analogy of buying a house. When you buy a home, if you have a good realtor and a good loan manager, you don't really know totally everything that's going on. You just kind of get moved through the process and you sign 1,000 documents and you have inspectors come, but you're not managing any of that. You're just showing up where they tell you to show up. You're signing what they're telling you to read and you're agreeing to it. And you then own a home. But there was 100 hours put into that behind the scenes and thousands of papers and all of these different people involved in it. It's the same thing with succeeding your company. There's a lot of work that goes into it behind the scenes, and good teams make it easy for business owners. Business owners need to be involved, but the best thing a business can owner do when they're in their succession plan is keep running their business like they're never going to succeed it. That continues to drive value, whether they liquidate or they sell and put the most dollars in their pockets and help everyone involved. If you get really involved in the succession plan, that becomes your focus, your business actually starts to suffer. So it's definitely a balance, and having that emotional intelligence around you of when to call you in and when to say, hey, go stay on the field. It's really important.
Yeah, right. Like you can't keep it. One of the things that we talk about a lot on this podcast, because I have so many listeners who are like transitioning from one practice style, say
Sure.
being an attorney into being a mediator or something like
Yeah.
that. And how difficult it is to find success in your new field when you keep one foot solidly in your old field. Same thing.
Yeah.
You're trying to just plan the transition, but you're also trying to run your business. It makes perfect sense. And tell us a little bit more, because we have talked about the fact you work with law firms, you work with solos in the legal field, but you guys do exit strategy planning transitions for a myriad of different businesses. Well, I'll let you explain it, because I think what you
Yeah.
do is not only helpful to those who are listening for their own practices, but as they're working with clients, I think it's important they know what you do.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So we do. We're relatively agnostic in the business of where we help. Our main focus is supporting business owners through transition. And so there isn't a business model or industry we haven't touched. There's some we go deep in just because of our referral source and our experience. We spend a lot of time in professional service. We spend a lot of time in construction, both in general contracting and sub world. We spend a lot of time in manufacturing and distribution. We also work in tech and SaaS space and those sorts of areas. So we have a big reach, particularly because my two partners and I have all worked as CFOs in those different industries pretty
Right.
deep in our own disciplines. And so we can geek out on them really fast. But we also have hospitality and we have med tech and we have healthcare and education. So we try to not just be one size fits all because everything's a custom build. It's your business.
Yeah.
But as long as the business owner wants help, we can help navigate through them what they need. And because we're CFOs by trade, we do play tax strategy. We do play, long-term deferral gains. We do play cap X and how we can use the, expenses now that the big beautiful bill lets us take advantage of for future gains. And we look at all those things too, but that's kind of when we get to geek out on it. The business model is the business model, and business owners are business owners, and they and we are all unique and we are all similar. And so a lot of the applied principles I'm speaking to are very real. And I will share with all of your listeners, like I mentioned earlier, I am John's successor and we are our clients. So even though we do this for a living, we still have the same struggles. We still have the same pitfalls. We see the mud puddle and we still step in it. We just hope the splash doesn't go as far. So we're very real in what we do because we live it every single day. And, we didn't mean for that to happen, but it's actually really helped us even more so be present with our clients when it gets really hard.
It makes so much sense. I mean, first off, you are business people and you have been business people. So when you come in and talk to business people, you're talking to peers in a certain way.
Yeah.
But also to be going through the struggles alone. I can tell you a different basis, but I was a divorce attorney for 15 years and then I got divorced. And I can tell you my divorce
It's different.
changed very drastically.
Right?
I met
Yeah.
my current husband who had just been divorced and he had young children. And so I became a step parent and dealing with co-parenting and all of that totally changed my practice again, right? So these are you guys not only bring the skill set, but you bring the life experience to this process, plus the lived experience of having done this with so many clients over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really special place to be invited into. John Scott and I, the partners and my whole firm, but we really take it to heart when business owners decide to work with us. I mean, they're letting us in behind the curtain. And we really work to be on their side of the table all the time. And so no matter who we're working with in their transition and their transaction, we're with them. We're saying, hey, we just had this hour-long conversation with a bunch of attorneys and financial planners. Did that make sense? Because this is our language, but that doesn't mean it's your language. I mean, you're a sheet metal company. Like I couldn't go out to the shop floor and know half the things. And I've been in a lot of sheet metal companies. So make sure this makes sense to you, right? This is your future. And I think we don't ask that of each other as business owners. We all feel like we have to know the answers and we have to understand what the next business buzz is, whether we're in it or not. And sometimes it's great, but sometimes it's just, can someone break that down for me? I didn't actually know what that meant, at the risk of sounding, adolescent or not smart. And that's not the case of these people. They just never been exposed to it before.
Sure. Well, we talk about languaging a lot in the legal field, right? We tend to use legalese, which isn't so great for people who didn't go to school for 3 years to learn how to speak a Latin-esque, style that makes us sound smart, but isn't particularly helpful to those we're speaking to. So you have to translate. So you guys are doing that in that space as well. So how long is a typical process that you're working with someone? I'm just curious.
It depends when we get introduced or we start working with them, but ideally, a really good transition process when someone's ready to go is 2 years.
2 years.
And the reason why I say that is there's some upfront work that has to happen, and we always start with evaluation because it's just a good barometer on where we're at.
Yeah.
From there, that sets a trajectory, and we usually then go into a full-on assessment of the business. What we have found is when you just jump into a go-to-market strategy, you miss a lot of things you need to know that make you better equipped to go to market and deal with the outside world looking in. We know how buyers are going to look at your business, but we don't know everything about your business. And so we need to go through this assessment process. It's almost like our own internal due diligence, but we look at people and we look at the organization and everything. The worst thing you can do is once you go to market or you start talking to key employees or identified buyers is not know the answer to a critical question that loses credibility and ultimately knocks down your purchase price. So we spend a couple months really getting to know the business. And even if they're not in our physical vicinity, we go, we travel, we see it, we get hands-on, we get into the business for a couple days. We understand the operational flow. We talk to the key employees, sometimes not as ECG, we present as different labels, but it's important, whoever's going to represent you, that they spend time getting to know you and that they spend time getting to know you from an outside in perspective, because that's the questions that are going to come to you. From there, whether if it's an inside sale or a key employee or family member, usually that timeline lessens significantly. We can usually get something done in about a year if everybody's in the know. Very often we have business owners say, I'm going to sell to my son. And we go, great. Does your son know? No.
Not
I'm like,
yet.
does he want to buy the company?
That was the next
I
question
don't know.
in my
Does
mind.
he have the financial means or can he get the financial means to buy the company if you need him to buy it? I don't know. And I'm like, so we have to go do that work, right? And figure it out. And so what we always have to establish before you start any deal flow is, do you have a buyer and a seller? And it sounds very simple, but it's actually very real. And more often than not, business owners and people who don't work in the space a lot will start down this process and we haven't even established if we have a buyer and a seller. Sometimes a kid says, I want to buy my dad's or my mom's company. I don't know if I have a seller. I don't know if they're ready to sell or not. And if they're not ready to sell, we can go through the process. Even if they say they are, but they're not, it's painful and we don't make it through. And I will tell you, a failed transaction is one of the worst experiences for everybody involved because of the emotional toll that it plays on people. So we take our time before we get into that actual tactical methodology of transaction. We take a lot of time in transition. Once you go to market, you're usually on the market for a couple months. Think of it like selling a home,
Yeah.
right? We have to find the right buyer. And the deal, unlike selling a home, then takes typically somewhere between 3 to 6 months, depending on how tight everything is. So, perfect case scenario, we get a business owner through a transition and transaction in 12 months. Realistically, we land around 18 months, but we say about 2 years because we just don't know what we don't know when we first get in.
I can imagine. But I would also think, do you have clients who bring you in that, like, we're thinking about something that may be happening 10 years
That's the
from now,
best.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the best. So we have clients who say, hey, I know I want to transact in 3 to 5 years. Can we do the valuation now and see where we're at? Can we do the assessment now and see where we're at? And then prioritize from what you find what matters and what moves the needle in the direction that helps us get where we're trying to go. I can tell you lots of things to do in your business, but if it doesn't get you where you're trying to go, it doesn't matter. So for instance, you're a professional service company. You want to sell in 5 years and you're using Excel to run your financials. I'm going to say, let's get you in QuickBooks, if nothing else. There might be a better, depending on your business, right? But let's get you in something because that's going to make it easier for someone to buy. If you're in, a big CRM and you're totally buttoned up and it's flowing really well, I would be silly to recommend go get a new CRM system and spend 250 grand just to implement it, much less all the service around it, when someone else who's going to buy you in 3 years has their own and they're going to just fold you into theirs. So there's things you can do out there that can improve your company, but if it's not getting you where you're trying to go with that end in sight, it may be in futility. And so that's where we have to be mindful and knowing what that time frame is helps you make strategic decisions. Now, if you're a construction company and you want to sell in 2 years, I'm not going to advise you to go out and replace all your old trucks because I don't know who's going to buy you if they want that type of truck or if they have new trucks themselves that they don't need your trucks, right? But if you're a wood shop and your lathe is broken, I'm going to say please go buy a lathe so we can keep producing the product we need to and someone else will be thankful that you did because they'd have to go buy that otherwise. So it just depends what levers you pull that matter in your business.
A word that I also talk about, or a concept I talk about a lot on this podcast, is strategy.
Yeah.
Instead of just dealing with things as they come along, actually having a strategy and then a plan to effectuate is really one of the ways that you can maximize the returns on any time investment and make good decisions.
Absolutely. And I tell business owners all the time, the best part is once you have it out, you have the free will to change your mind. But we get so stuck in ideation. We get so stuck in, it's not perfect. I can't put anything out there, or I might change my mind that we don't do anything. And yes, it can be frustrating for people around you when you change your mind if we're not well in communicating it or it's happening too often. But not doing anything is more frustrating.
More first. Yeah.
It's actually worse for everyone involved, including your family, because they're all waiting to know what you're going to do too.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to
Especially
ask.
that son who's going to buy your company that he doesn't
They
even
don't know
know
how to
that's the
ask.
plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I've
Yeah.
seen that actually in
I bet. I bet.
a lot of the times
Yeah.
in the families when I would do some of the divorces where we had big businesses, ultra high net worth families, there's often a succession plan that the kids are not that particularly aware of. people have plans for their kids. Sometimes the kids have different plans. So, yeah. Well, Andrea, I hope this was a big, huge light bulb going off for my listeners out
Me
there.
too.
As I truly think that many of us just leave this to happen as it's going, whatever happens, happens, or it's a big surprise to us. And there's just so much that we can do or
Yeah.
not do. I love that
Yeah.
you pointed out that, having created a career and a professional life that supported you and your family and let you live the life you wanted to live. Let me just point out to you, if you had a successful, in however you define success, successful dispute resolution or legal career, and you're ready to leave that now, but if you had what you consider a successful career, you win. You
You
have
won.
you
Yeah, you're
won right
winning.
there. It's
Yeah.
whether you sell it or not, whether it's valuable to someone else or not, if it let you do what you wanted to do to be the success you wanted to be, then you won. You already have.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's really key. So let's make sure people know how to get in touch with you and find out more about Exit Consulting Group.
Sure. So you can go to exitconsultinggroup.com. Really easy
Super easy,
URL to find
everyone.
us.
They made that
Yep.
easy for you.
We sure did. We sure did. And please feel free to reach out to Susan. She has my contact information. I'm on LinkedIn. Exit Consulting Group's on LinkedIn. And so we'd love to, just be a sounding wall to anyone who even just wants to have a conversation.
Yeah, I'm going to put all of the links in the show notes for everyone, as well as in the
Great.
social media. So it'll be on LinkedIn, it'll be on Instagram, it'll be all over the place. And don't forget now, everyone, we're putting the episodes on video. So go check out the YouTube channel for the Practice Playbook podcast. And Andrea, I loved this conversation, and
Yeah.
I have some great golden nuggets to take to my current clients. One of them
Good.
would be we need to have you go talk with Andrea. So.
I would
We'll be
welcome it.
connecting
And
you
I'll
soon.
give you this to your listeners too, Susan. If anyone is to reach out to ECG on our website or via me LinkedIn, we'd be happy to send you one of John's books. It's a quick read. It's a collection of short stories of his experience working with business owners over the last 20 years through it. And it's really well received. People find it very approachable. So if nothing else, if you do one thing, we will send you a book for free. So please
Get the
contact us.
book. I didn't know
Get
about the
the
book.
book.
I'm going to get the book. So
Get
thank
the
you.
book.
And I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to tell my 2 clients to get the book. So again,
Great.
thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I'm so glad we got to have this conversation. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Susan.
I loved that conversation with Andrea. And before we close, let's pull out a few golden nuggets from this powerful conversation. First, if your business cannot run without you, it is not yet transferable. And that doesn't mean you have not been successful. It simply means the structure still depends on you. Second, exit strategy is not just about selling. It's about transition. It is about legacy. It is about clarity around what relevance and freedom look like in your next chapter. Third, your timing matters. The best time to start thinking about transition is long before you're ready to transition, before you feel ready to leave. Small structural changes now create options for you later. And because I want you to take this beyond reflection, I've created a companion resource for this episode called the Founder Independence Scorecard. It will walk you through a short but strategic self-assessment to help you see clearly whether you are building a scalable firm or sustaining a high-performing job. This is not just a checklist, it's a mirror. It's going to help you identify where you are structurally strong, where you may be a single point of failure, and what one action you can take in the next 90 days could build some real leverage. You can download it through the link in the show notes and take 10 intentional minutes with it. Be honest. Then choose one structural move and schedule it, because this is not about selling your practice. It's about building something that gives you freedom, clarity, and choice. And that is the real win. Thanks so much for listening to the Practice Playbook podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love it if you'd take a moment to leave a review, follow the show, or share it with a colleague who's ready to build the practice of their dreams. If you want more support and tools like the ones you heard today, join the waitlist for the Practice Accelerator, my brand new subscription program packed with resources to help you grow smarter. You can find the link in the show notes or visit susaneguthrie.com to learn more. Until next time, stay focused, stay intentional, and remember, success starts with the right playbook.